I want to tell you a few stories this morning. For some reason, human stories never cease to amaze me and inspire me. So many people go through life thinking that they're not important or they don't have a story, but I just don't see it that way. Everybody goes through things. Everybody has the unexpected twists and turns, and God seems to do something unique in every life once you're able to pull the person's story out of them. And so I just wanted to share a few stories this morning that have a similar theme to them. So the first story is about a man who was born in 1890. He was born in 1890, his name was Harland, and there's nothing incredibly notable about his early life other than the fact that he couldn't seem to hold down a job. Now, some might argue that he lost jobs. Others might say that he was just bored with the jobs he had. But it's funny as you read his story. He was a streetcar operator. He was a railroad fireman. He was an insurance salesman. And the list just keeps going on and on. I don't know exactly what it was for him that caused him to not be able to stick with a job, but he just hopped from one to the other, almost as if he hadn't yet found the thing that he was supposed to be doing with his life. So when he was 40 years old, about a year older than me at this point, he was running a gas station, a service station in Kentucky, and the service station served food to people too. And so it was a big throughway, and he began to just work on the food a little bit as he managed this service station. Even in that day and age, this is a decent job, but it's not a notable job. But during that time, he began to perfect a fried chicken recipe that he loved and that his customers began to love too. You might see where the story is going at this point. And so he began to perfect it. It became so popular that people would drive from all over the place, as word spread, to come for this fried chicken. And so he opened up a restaurant across the street from the service station after a few years and began serving all sorts of Southern cuisine, but especially that fried chicken. In fact, it became so popular, gained statewide attention, that the governor of the state in 1935 named him Colonel, gave him the title of Colonel for the way that he had brought joy and brought notoriety to the state of Kentucky. So Colonel Harland Sanders, began to get famous for his fried chicken. And here's what's really interesting to me. This would have been an amazing story of finding your niche in life on its own. But at age 62, he decided that it was time to step back from the day-to-day operations of the restaurant. And he thought, I wonder if others could sell this chicken. And so he began to work on franchising. He began to work on franchising Kentucky Fried Chicken at age 62. At age 62, his legacy, the thing that he is known for, his fame, didn't really begin until age 62. Let me tell you about somebody else. Woman who was born in 1912 in Pasadena, California. Now, she had a fairly normal childhood. She was well educated. She was a young woman who was tall and athletic and confident, which in those days, it was hard to find your place as a woman because the opportunities were limited, no matter how smart or talented you were. And so after graduating college, she went to New York City and became a typewriter for a local advertising agency. But then World War II happened. World War II happened, the country was turned upside down, and they needed people to work and enlist in ways that they had never considered before, and she certainly felt the pull to that. So she joined the Office of Strategic Services to do her part for the country. And because of her experience in New York City, they made her a typist for one of the offices. But before long, they saw her talent, her intelligence, and her aptitude. And so they made her a top secret researcher, putting her in charge of some of the US's most important strategic initiatives of World War II. One of the more interesting projects that she worked on was they had a problem. They had a problem that curious sharks were detonating their underwater explosives, and this was a problem. They needed those underwater explosives in place. And so she was put right at the top of that project to figure out a way to get those sharks away from the explosives. And so one of the things that she did was worked with a team to start to cook up different concoctions of things that might act as a shark repellent, and then test them to see if it would keep sharks away from their explosives. And that was really the first time she had ever done anything that was kind of like cooking. So the war tapers off to an end. She marries someone, and in 1948, they're both government agents. They move to Paris, France. And in Paris, she has a meal that changes her life. A meal that opens her eyes to new flavors, to new depths of deliciousness. And she had never really cooked before, but at that moment, she felt this pull, this call to explore this further. And so she joined the Cordon Bleu cooking school in Paris, France, and began learning how to cook at age 36. She graduated at age 39. And then we know that Julia Child wrote the textbook on French cuisine for United States Americans. She brought French cooking almost single-handedly to the US and popularized it. And she wrote some of the most beloved cookbooks in the history of American cookbooks. And again, what is so interesting to me is that one of the things she's really well known for and loved for were her cooking shows on TV. And she didn't start those shows until her late 50s and into her 60s and 70s. Her legacy, the thing that we remember her for most, happened in those years of her life. So you see a theme here. These unusual, unexpected changes in life call happening later in life. And I want to read you a story from the book of Genesis that follows suit. The story of Abram and Sarai. Two people who weren't all that notable. They were wanderers. They were nomads. They couldn't have kids. They didn't own any land. They shouldn't be people that we still remember today. And yet God had different plans for them. This is Genesis 17, verses 1 through 7, and verses 15 and 16. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless, and I will make my covenant between me and you, and will make you exceedingly numerous. Then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, As for me, this is my covenant with you. You shall be the ancestor of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the ancestor of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and your offspring after you throughout their generations, for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and to your offspring after you. And then it goes on to say this. God said to Abraham, As for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall give rise to nations. King of people shall come from her. Did you catch that in the first verse? It starts off by saying when Abram was 99. Now, I don't want to nitpick about how old he actually was. We could argue that that might not be the exact age he was, but the point is there. This was somebody who was too old for any of this. He had lived his life. It was what it was, and it was probably coming close to an end. He was too old. And Sarai, she was too old. And they had never been able to have kids. They didn't have anything notable to their names. And yet God says, I am going to make a covenant with you. A covenant is a deal. It's a mutual relationship. It's a promise that you're going to walk in a certain way, but God is going to be with you every step of that way, providing for you, doing whatever it was that God promised to you. God tends to show up at moments in our lives where we think, well, we're too far down the road this way, or I'm too old, or I can't make a change like that now. And God seems to say, I have something so unexpected, so much greater for you, so much different than what you think you can do. And I'll be with you every step of the way. Too often we think, well, we had our chance, and now this is what we do, and this is what it is. But for God, there are always opportunities for new beginnings. Always opportunities for a new thing that will change and shape the world. I mean, Abraham and Sarah, this is the beginning of the greatest story ever told. They become the parents of everything that comes after in the Bible. The most beautiful story of God's grace coming to save the world, all of creation, kind of begins with these two and their family at age 99 or whatever it was. You could say, well, that's an unusual circumstance. And I would agree with you, except for the fact that this isn't the exception in the Bible, it's the rule. God seems to come to people at all sorts of unlikely points in their lives and invites them to do something that they never expected to, a new thing. So for you, who feels like you've gone too far down a certain road to do something new or different, or what you feel God tugging at you to do, know that God will follow you to any length necessary to tell you about a new way, to show you a new thing. It's not too far for God to do something new. If you've experienced an opportunity that ended in your life, maybe a career ended, or there was an ending that felt like, well, the good thing is gone now. It's funny, God seems to do some of the best new things in those moments. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Famous lyrics by the Semisonic song Closing Time. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Isn't that the story of our faith? Death and resurrection? The best new things happen shortly after something dear and important to us dies, or ends, or is taken away. I know it can be hard to keep hope and faith in those moments, but God is not done with you, especially in the moments where everything seems to be crashing down. God will do something new in those moments. And for those of you who feel like you're too old for God to do something new and big and unexpected, just wait and see what God plans to do through you.